Well, hello and welcome to In the Growth Space podcast. My name is David McGlennon and I am your host. I'm really excited that you have decided to join me today here on this podcast. And decided is a key word because today we're going to talk about decisions. We're going to talk about choices. And you know that here on this podcast, if you've listened for any length of time, we're all about growth and expanding our lives and living our lives on purpose and with design and intention. Today, we have a guest who's going to help us to get just a little bit more self-aware, to help us to understand the choices that we've made in the past, why they matter to us, what choices we're facing today, and how we might take them and take action on them. She's going to give us some amazing self-coaching tools to help us through the decisions that we're making. So you're going to want to really dig in on this one. You might even want to get a pen and a piece of paper to write some of the questions down that she offers to us as she goes through a tool called choice mapping. Let me just tell you a little bit about our guest. Our guest is Kim DeYoung. And Kim is a seasoned choice coach. She is a facilitator, and she's the author of the Book of Choice. And she helps thoughtful people make choices that truly matter. She has over 2 decades of experience coaching visionary entrepreneurs. And Kim has helped hundreds of people make intentional choices that bring their ideas to life. She's happiest when she is engaging in interesting conversations like the one we're about to have here today. And they're all about significant choices. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation that we're going to have right now with Kim DeYoung. Well, hey, Kim, welcome to In the Growth Space. I am so delighted to have you here today.
Thank you. I have been looking forward to this all week.
I
All
have
week. Love
I
it.
have been too. You know, ever since we talked initially, we got introduced by some folks that we both mutually know. I've been really interested in your work and just the work of choice mapping, and we're going to talk about what that is here in a moment. But I'm curious, tell us a little bit about your background because I think that will be help us to lead into what this whole thing about choice mapping really is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll take you back a bit pre-choice mapping,
Okay.
which is like many of us, many in the entrepreneurial space. My career has zigged and zagged since I
Yes.
began. Started corporate in the retail space, which I loved, never
Yeah.
thought I would leave
Yeah.
until I was let go from a big job while pregnant with my first child after I bought the first home that needed the double income. So, like the
Yes.
whammy.
Yep.
And it then was, I fell into entrepreneurship, starting my own retail company and truly figuring out this was like early 2000s, learning how to do everything online marketing. Like I
Yeah.
had to make it up. I
Yeah. Yeah.
had great resources from having worked at the Gap and at a Republic, but now I'm in like the beginnings of the online internet marketing stage,
Mm,
learning everything.
yeah.
And also finding my way into coaching. So both pieces were happening simultaneously. And interestingly, after just really spending a lot of time developing businesses where I was getting myself out there online, learning
Mm-hmm.
about how to sell, how to write copy, how to
Yeah.
do all the things that we learn to do running an online business,
Yeah.
um, I an interesting thing happened for me, and it is about a decade ago. Coincidentally, unrelated to anything I was doing, I was being interviewed by somebody,
Hmm.
and the question that they asked me was, Kim, what happens when we make a choice and take action? How does our life unfold? And it
Oh,
was kind of
interesting.
just dropped into the conversation, but my answer was an interesting answer that caused me to say, wow, when we take action, our life unfolds because we are moving in one direction, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also this beautiful synchronicity and momentum happening
Mm-hmm.
as well. But
Yeah.
after that interview happened, I then went back. I thought, let me come up with an example of this in my own life.
Yeah, sure.
And I went back to a choice I'd made a year or two prior, and I'm very visual. So I grabbed a mind mapping software and I looked at this
Okay.
particular choice and I thought, how did this choice come into my life?
Hmm.
And I not only looked at that, but I looked at all that had come in a
Mm.
2 year window.
Yeah.
So now I'm left with this piece of paper with a lot of legs of a map. You can imagine a mind map, what that may look like.
Sure.
And what was fascinating was to look back from a place of gratitude, from a
Ugh.
place of, wow, had I
Yeah.
not made this particular choice 2 years ago, all of this stuff would not have happened.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also the vantage point of, wow, what choice today could I make?
Mm-hmm.
And now what becomes possible? So
Mm.
I shared this map with one friend who was like kind of mesmerized by all the lines on the page. And she
Sure.
said, would you do it for me?
Oh,
Now, I had no process, none whatsoever,
sure.
but as a connector, as somebody who was like interested in having a deep dive conversation, I said, yes, of course, let's
Of
go.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just proceed to ask her questions about a particular choice she had made.
Mm.
And in so doing, I'm listening for things, not even realizing what I'm doing, but I'm listening for these nuggets of things
Mm.
that she's sharing as I am digging into this particular choice. In her case, it might have been 1 or 2 years prior. But now I'm taking all of that information and making sense of it visually.
Okay.
Well, when I shared this back with her, she said to me, Kim, I know you are a get it done girl. I know you're that person who loves to take action. Can you not do that with this mapping? She said, I feel like there's something very special
Mm.
in what you're doing. Can you just enjoy this process?
Yeah.
And the way that I internalized that request of hers, which was beautiful to me, was I'm going to enjoy this experience of having conversations with people about their choices and
Mm-hmm.
not know where it's going to go. And I'm going to
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
for 1 year, this was the year 2014, I
Mm.
ended up having conversations with 29 people. They
Okay.
were friends, they were some clients, some people who I had met and really liked and said, hey, do you want to explore a choice?
Yeah.
Every person said yes when I asked that question. And what was fascinating was to really have this beautiful experience
Mm.
of looking back as I was. And pretty much at the end of the year, I thought, I've got something here. Like I have a
Yeah.
unique vantage point because I've had so many conversations, because I've looked back at my choices. I've just sort of developed this like new way of looking at things. I felt like a little bit like in a candy store. It was like, wow, I can go back to my choices at 20, at 30, all
Yeah.
sorts of things and like unpack them and understand them in a different way.
Right.
And then it became like, okay, now what do I do with this?
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of kind of brings you to that place of
Yeah.
a bit of the journey.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and so I guess to tell everybody then, I know you gave a story here about how you started to kind of map out these choices, but this whole topic of choice mapping, what is it? Is it a process? Is it is it a tool? Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that for a moment.
What's very funny, and the specifics of your question, when I began choice mapping, I didn't really ever imagine sharing the details of it. If
Okay.
somebody was if you and I were having a beautiful one-to-one experience,
Yeah.
you weren't necessarily coming for the mapping. You were coming because I was going to take you deep into an exploration of a choice you'd made
Yeah.
or one you wanted to make.
Okay.
And so for years it was my behind the scenes tool. But
Mm,
what it became when I was asked, wait a minute, Kim, maybe people want to know about this.
sure.
What choice mapping is it is a tool, really a creative tool
Mm-hmm.
that you can use to get to the bottom of your choices, why you make them, what you want to understand. And at the root, I mean, if I would say in the most simple way, it is a way to understand your truth. Like
Oh,
what is
yeah.
true for you in any moment? What was true for
Sure.
you then about
Mm,
why you made a choice? What is true for you now?
mm,
And what's really fascinating about choice mapping it can be it almost doesn't matter the tool that you use. I happen to use an online tool. I just find it easy and simple. I've had many
sure.
students who love to draw and they're in a sketchbook or
Okay.
whatever they're doing. That's not the important piece.
Mm,
The important piece of choice mapping is the conversation that you have with yourself.
okay.
It's imagine
Yeah.
let's just take an example. Let's just say I choose to focus on my self-care. Let's just
Yeah.
imagine that. And now you begin to have a conversation with yourself where you're saying, why does that matter? And
Mm,
you go there and you go there. And you could keep it pretty superficial and just have a few answers, or you could listen for the deeper calling
mm-hmm.
and keep answering, kind of almost having that internal Q&A with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So any map will start with, why does the choice matter? What could
Oh,
hold you back from stepping into the choice? How do
okay.
you want to show up as you step into this choice? What
Mm.
becomes possible when you step into this
I
choice?
love those
And what
questions.
actions will you take? So it's a beautiful coaching tool,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
it's you using it to coach yourself,
Right.
you using it to support your child, you
Mm.
using it to support a family member, a client. It
Right.
helps you to extract the details of a choice so that
Mm.
you feel greater confidence and greater clarity as you're stepping forth
I
into that
love that.
choice.
I love that. So really, if I understand you, it's really a self awareness tool first, kind of at its core, but then also it gives you the ability to, as you understand yourself, to be able to then look forward and as you maybe prospectively look at and evaluate choices that you have kind of a methodology or you have a an understanding of how you've made choices in the past, so you have a tool to be able to then understand the choices that are ahead of you, if I'm understanding the
Very
process
much
right.
so. I mean, there's no doubt you've nailed it. I mean, at the root, it is a tool for self-awareness.
Yeah.
Whether the self-awareness that you want to have of who was I when I made these choices in the
Yeah.
past, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, just even from a looking back perspective, when we look back, we can either look back from this place of deep regret. I made
Uh-huh.
a choice. I'm really not happy with it. I'm carrying shame, baggage, all of that.
Sure.
Or great pride. Wow, I
Yeah.
love how I made that choice. And there were beautiful qualities
Mm,
that I demonstrated in making that choice at 20, at 30. I really want to make sure that shows up in my
yeah.
adult self as I make
Yes.
choices. I mean, it's really it can be very special when you're focusing on it from that
Mm-hmm.
perspective, but it's just a repeatable tool.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
whether you are making a choice about stepping into a business partnership, whether you're making a choice about starting a new relationship, ending a relationship, a
Mm,
choice about something personal in your life,
mm,
you can sit down with yourself for, as short a window as 5 minutes and longer should you choose, and go back to it and pull these details out of yourself. Again,
right.
imagining having this simple place to capture this information. And here's an important thing. Mapping is so different than journaling. So many of us
Mm,
journal.
yeah.
And I
Right.
know
Right.
I've kept journals on and off over the years, and there are
Sure.
places that I use to like dump out stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
a fluid and a beautiful writing process.
Yeah.
Rarely do I go back. I mean, it's a beautiful way to clear my head. But a map is different. A map is not capturing your answers in long form. It's actually capturing them in nuggets
Okay.
so that when you're reading them, you're like, oh, that feels accurate, because you're reading it in a sentence, two sentence form. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't feel accurate, tweak the words till it does. So
Sure.
this map is truly capturing how you feel about all the issues of a choice.
I see. Yeah. So as I think about what you're sharing, so this tool then is different than just taking like a choice that you have or a decision that you're going to make and kind of create the traditional pros and cons list, right? And and so how do because that seems like it's only like binary and you're not really
Yes.
asking yourself questions about that, right?
It's so funny that you would mention the pro and con list. I mean, I grew up, my dad's a lawyer. I had a million legal pads always around.
Sure.
Everything was a pro and con list.
Yeah.
And I actually have this beautiful memory of a key choice I had to make. I was around, maybe I was 30, and I'm remembering where I was sitting doing the pro and con list. And of course, I made the choice. That was what I did. There's nothing wrong with the pro and con list. This is just a
Yeah.
deeper exploration. It's more inquiry.
Yeah.
So you are getting more out of it. I think
Right.
we've all probably had our versions of the pro and con list.
Right.
And this is a tool that you're just getting under the surface more for yourself. One of
Yeah.
the things I see happen a lot, for example, first question always is, why does the choice matter to me? Because you
Mm.
want to understand,
Yeah.
like, why would you be moving forth with that business partnership, that personal relationship, that
Yeah.
self-care, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then it's also so important to understand, like, what could get in my way of moving forth with this choice? What
Mm-hmm.
fears do I have? What limiting beliefs? What obstacles?
Mm-hmm.
And now you can look at that really honestly with your adult perspective and say, wow, I see why the choice matters and I see the fears. Am I really going to let those fears get in my way? Now, some of
Right.
the fears may be really, really valid and truly, the limiting beliefs may be holding you back. It may be an opportunity to do some work around those.
Sure.
But then here's where the magic comes in. When you really kind of now look to what could be possible when I step into that choice. So
Yeah.
now you're in this space where you're dreaming, you're imagining all the stuff that could be.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of like, okay, I see what's possible. I see the stuff that could hold me back. Am I
Yep.
really going? I'm feeling the dream in the future. Am
Yeah.
I going to push through the fears so that I step into what I want? And
Right.
if so, what are the actions that I need to take to begin doing it? And then this is where the magic happens. And this kind of goes back to the first thing that you'd asked me. It's like now you begin taking the action towards this choice that matters to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And now momentum happens.
Right.
You get the call that shows up out of the blue. You
Right.
have a thought, the friend calls, like the things start happening because you took action. So now your choice takes on a bigger life.
Yeah.
But here's another key point, and I've had this happen many times. Like, just take a business example of
Mm-hmm.
choosing to work with somebody new in business.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this various times where I might have done the map. I choose to work with so and so business partner, and I think through all the stuff. And whether it happens or not, I'm in another situation a year or two later.
Mm.
I can go back to that first map because I'm sure a lot of the details are relevant for the
Sure.
second partner. I can update it for the specificity of the new partner. But a
Mm.
lot of the things that might cause me to be nervous about stepping into partnership. Am I scared I'm going to lose control? Am I scared of having all my eggs in one basket? Like you could
Right.
imagine those types of things are similar. So the
Yeah.
beauty of having created a map, especially for business things, becomes
Mm-hmm.
this tool that if you've thought about it well once, it's
Yeah.
going to serve you as you make other decisions
Again
as a
and
base to
again.
work from.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that leads me to think about. I know in your book, the Book of Choice, which I happen to have here on my desk, it's amazing. But there are different types of choice maps, and
Yes.
talk a little bit about the different one because some look backwards, some look forwards, and so maybe talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
So there are three types of maps that I've created. The first is what's called a people map,
Okay.
which is a way to look at how you know who you know.
Hmm.
So as
Okay.
somebody who, look, let's just take you and I have met. Who
Yeah.
connected us together? It was a
Yeah.
beautiful man named Derek.
Yep.
So if I think of how I met Derek, you think of how you met Derek, and you kind of go back and forth
Yeah.
or continue going back. I met Derek through a community that I'm a part of.
Right.
All of a sudden, that elevates you in my eyes because I
Mm.
realize like you are connected through someone that I deeply care about, who
Yeah.
I'm connected through a community that I deeply care
Deeply care
about,
about.
who I
Yeah.
got there from a friend who said, Kim, you need to join this community. Like
Sure.
I start to put the pieces together. It
Yeah.
elevates the quality of, or how you feel about the people in your life. That's
Mm.
one type of map.
Hmm.
Another map that really is a very special one is called an unfolding map, which is how to look at a particular choice you've made in a window of time.
Okay.
So, for example, if you've started a new job or you've started a new relationship or you've joined a new community to say, okay, I chose to join this new community. Who have I met? What's happened?
Mm.
What opportunities have happened? And to say, I'm curious, just in a 1 year window, what has come
Yeah.
into my life from that one choice? And one of the beautiful things that you can do with that map is you may notice, let's just imagine you're noticing as you've said, I chose to join this community, and you're noticing certain people that you've met, And you may notice a leg of your map that has become stagnant
Yeah.
versus another one. Like, let's just say I met David, and from David, I met Bob, and I met Mary, and I met
Mm,
this, and I met that. But maybe I met Tina, and nothing else happened after Tina. Well,
mm.
likely that's because I stopped having communication with Tina. And at any
Yeah.
moment, I could pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Tina, what's up?"
Yeah.
And, remember we were talking about so and so? And like, so you bring about momentum. It becomes
Mm,
a visual jogger to say, wait,
yeah.
do I want to put more energy in
Sure.
this part of my map? Do I want to reach out to that person? Do I want to then therefore watch it grow? So that's yeah.
I just was I'm going to comment on that for just a second, Kim, because I think that for anyone in our audience who is in business development, this is a perfect tool for you to begin to look at where your opportunities might be.
Hmm.
And if you're looking to develop additional business and additional opportunities, create a people map and find out who did I know who introduced me to so and so and who helped me do that, and then like you said, like if there's a branch that's like stopped, then gosh, maybe I need to reach out and just say, hey, I was thinking about you,
Yeah.
and love to catch up with you, see where it unfolds from there. But I just
Yeah.
think that people map is such a beautiful way to, as a person, business development person, to actually move forward and maybe even create some opportunities for yourself just by visualizing, looking at who do I know, or who all do I know, that and how did I get to know them? So I
Yes.
love that.
Yes. It's I have found it's incredibly powerful. I think by nature I'm a connector, so I just
Yeah.
always think like that. And
Yeah.
it helps me to align. Oh, wait, I met her because of him, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sort of thinking through it. And it just sort of adds a quality of making that person more special because I see where they've come from.
Yeah.
So that it is a beautiful tool from a business perspective. And again, back to the whole benefit of why mapping. It's all
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness. So it's
Yeah.
self-awareness of the people, it's self-awareness of what's come into your life from a choice. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the first two maps. The
Yeah.
map that I use truly 95% of the time is called an exploration map.
Okay.
And that is the map that, as I was beginning and I was sharing kind of the 5 questions that you begin to ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that is the map that supports you to kind of really get underneath the whys and the whats and the emotions and the hows of the choice and
Yeah.
to really have that deep conversation. And that map can be used to look back, it can be used to look into the present or the
Mm.
future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a lot of legs. And I have used that map to really understand who I was when I was making choices in
Mm.
earlier stages of my life. There are times I've used two different maps to give myself two vantage points. So to take a choice
Interesting. Okay.
that I might have made, like as an example, I chose to start a new job and to look at the why did I do that? What was I hoping for? What came from it?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, there's that emotionality of that choice and the detail. But then also from an unfolding map perspective of, wow, I chose to take that job and what came into my life and what did I observe? So we can
Mm.
look at our life in different perspectives.
The thing that pops into my mind just as I listen to you share about this amazing tool, is the quote that, and I'm blanking on who said it, but it's the unexamined life is not a life that's worth living, and I think, gosh, this is a great way to really create an examined life and to be able to understand the choices that we made, and maybe even if we have a decision that's facing us, to be able to look backwards so that we can look forward and really make a better choice, a better decision.
So, what's so lovely about the quote that you've just said, I'd like to believe I'm the first person who said it, but probably not. But that component is in my book. The whole premise of why do we even care about looking
Right.
at our choices?
Yeah.
It is so that we can live a more thoughtful, conscious, examined life, whatever the
Yeah.
word is that resonates with you. Because
Yeah.
if you think about the opposite, like if
Mm.
you're not bringing consciousness to your choices, life is kind of happening to you.
Right.
Who wants
Right.
that? Really, who
Yeah.
wants that?
Exactly. Well, and I think, I here, so this is a little philosophical here, but I think in America, we have a tendency to just allow life to push us and to go forward, just no matter what. We just kind of get in the flow of the busyness and blah, blah, blah. And, probably about 10 years ago, when I first started my current business, I was at a point where I wanted to be very intentional with how I lived my life. And that choice to be intentional, I think, I know it changed the trajectory of my life. It changed so many things, and the opportunities that unfolded because of that choice, that just the decision to be intentional and create the life that I wanted, as opposed to just allowing the life to happen. So
Yes.
I know that I wouldn't have had the opportunities. We probably wouldn't be sitting here talking,
Exactly. And I think what you're sharing is being intentional is a choice.
Right.
And so here's an interesting thing. If I were to say a dream that I have in my life,
Mm,
it is for the younger generation to
yeah,
have that. Because
sure.
I don't think we were educated with that
Sure.
information
Yeah.
earlier on.
Yeah.
And, imagine my kids I have three in their 20s, and this is a message that I'm sharing with them always,
Yeah.
like, be conscious about the
Hmm.
choice you make. Bring your intentional, like if you choose or don't choose, it's a choice.
Yes. Yes.
So be thoughtful about what you're stepping into. If you're
Yes.
ready to move into the new job, bring your thoughtfulness. If you're saying now
Mm,
is not the time to look for a new job, just own where you are
yeah.
with a thoughtfulness. And
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
it's crucial. And I
Yeah,
can
I do
imagine,
too.
I mean, for you, what you're describing is something so powerful that choice made 1 decade ago of you choosing to bring intentionality. I can only imagine
It
how that
changed.
transformed
Yeah,
everything.
it
It's
changed
beautiful.
everything. It changed everything. And as you were sharing about the tool with younger people, my mind actually went to thinking about older people that are getting ready for a season change in their life. I was just talking with a coaching client this morning, and she's getting ready to move into the next season of her life. Some people call it retirement. I tend to
Hmm.
like it to call it desirement, because it's
That's
moving
great.
into something as opposed to, just stopping something. And I think that this tool could be used for those business owners who might be listening today. Maybe you're a founder of a business and you don't know what the heck you're going to do after you hand the business off, or even the process of doing that. How do you make those decisions? And I think a choice map would be a
Yeah.
beautiful way to be able to really evaluate how you've made choices in the past, and then the decisions that you need to make in the future.
And no doubt, yes. And you've also just brought up something so important, which is that there's no limit on the age in which we make choices. So people will
Yeah.
often say to me, Kim, who's your ideal client? And I'll say it's more of a psychographic than a demographic. It's a
Yeah.
person who wants to bring intentionality, whether they
Yeah.
are 20, 50, or 80.
Yeah.
And I have many 80-year-old friends that are dear to me who,
Mm,
80 is still quite vibrant,
absolutely.
and it becomes the question of what are you choosing to do in
Mm,
these years of your life? Like,
yes.
what are you choosing to create a legacy? Or, what may the issues be? And
Mm,
helping to support them to realize that they have agency
right.
over that part of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your book, you give some questions that are really helpful at, different places for the choice map. I'd love for you just to kind of go back to some of those questions, because I love them. And I think from a self-coaching perspective, I really hope our listeners maybe take a moment to, either rewind or pause and grab a
Yeah.
pen, because thinking about these questions is such a powerful way to approach these choice maps. But thinking about, why does this choice matter to you first and foremost
Mhm.
is so powerful.
Yeah. So the question that you're asking is really like, what are the key 5 questions to ask yourself?
Yes, yes.
So this is when you're doing the exploration map, the one where you want to understand either the choice you made or are making in greater depth. So number
Hmm.
one, always begin with why does the choice matter to me?
Yeah.
And with all of these choices, I'll just state this up front, you can go deeper with
Mm.
and why and why and why,
Sure.
so you
Yeah.
can you can pull it all apart. But question one, why does it matter to me? Question two, what could hold me back? What could hold
Mm-hmm.
me back from stepping into this choice that matters
Yeah.
to me? Do I have fears, limiting beliefs, obstacles?
Yeah.
Question three, which is probably my favorite question of all, which is how will I choose to show up to be as
Mm.
I make this choice? And
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
just an important question to ask ourselves every day. Who am I
Right.
choosing to show up to be in the world,
Yeah.
as a human?
Sure.
Um, Fourth question is what becomes possible from this choice? This
Yeah.
happens to be a great question to
Yeah.
do in partnership with someone. Sometimes it's hard for us to imagine all that could be. We limit ourselves, and so to sit with someone that cares for you, understands you, believes in you, they
Mm.
may often think a little bit bigger for you than you can for yourself. So that's a nice experience if you can.
Yeah.
And then the fifth question is, what actions are you taking?
Yeah.
And now you can look at actions in two ways. It can be the short term, what am I doing in the next 3 days, or
Mm-hmm.
it could be a little bit longer term. I always recommend having something very short term so that
Yeah.
can begin to get the momentum right
Right.
away.
Yeah, yeah, I love that because I think I was sharing with you before we hit record, just the momentum of taking a choice. If one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams, Henry David Thoreau said, and advancing doesn't mean it has to be a giant leap. It can just be a little step. And I
Mhm.
think, too often we think of all the big steps that we need to take from here to there, but we can take little steps that
Yeah.
just continue to help us get momentum. Take a step. And I think when we take a step, we start to break down the fear, because when you're staring at maybe a big choice or a big opportunity, we can think that there's so far to go. But really, when we take that little choice, that little
Hmm.
step, and create the momentum, fear
Yes.
starts to crumble and the fear starts to come down.
Well, you're bringing up something that I think is interesting to consider, which is that when we make a goal, like our natural orientation is this place in the distance, like where am I going? It's a
Yeah.
very outward looking place.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when we make a choice, it's really where am I beginning? Like
Yeah.
I'm choosing to do this thing and I'm going to take actions
Mm-hmm.
according to this thing. And not to say that you don't have a goal as well, but it's a different orientation of where your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And so it really is about I make the choice
Mm-hmm.
and I begin to take steps, small
Yeah.
steps. And small steps do matter
They do.
because with each step, there's also the momentum of the synchronicities and the things that happen in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So one thought that just occurred to me is, how does this process keep us from being like paralyzed? Because I know there are certain people who might see a choice and they just, have this analysis paralysis, as the
Yeah.
saying goes. How does this help us get out of that?
That is a very interesting and important question. I think I've got a very interesting vantage point of speaking with so many people
Sure.
about their choices. And a question that I often ask is like, what does get in your way of making choices? And analysis paralysis is probably one of the key things. People get really stumped on making choices. And
Mm.
so part of it is teaching them a tool that helps them to understand what is
Mm-hmm.
true for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about research and analysis. It's about like, okay, I've got this information here. I see what matters to me. I see this truth of where I am on
Mm-hmm.
one piece of paper.
Yeah.
Let me take a step forth. Let me take a small step forth. Like,
Right.
and it doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming thing. A step, as we were just saying,
Yeah.
begins to make a difference.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I have to say, I'm enjoying your book. I'm about halfway through at the moment, and I love all of the questions that you pose and offer, as well as just the tool of how do you do this. And so I want to encourage our listeners to go out and get the Book of Choice by Kim DeYoung, because it's a great tool for self-coaching to create that intentionality in your life. And I absolutely just love it. Kim, what are some last words? What haven't we talked about that maybe we should have? What would you like to share with the audience? I would love to hear from
You
you.
and I could stay on for hours. I
I
have no
know, I
doubt
know.
about that. There's like a million legs of where we could go.
Yeah.
Um, what would be something of valuable for your audience? I think of your audience as like emerging leaders, people who are
Yes.
stepping into the world. The
Yes.
nature of that is one that requires an element of
Mm.
decisiveness.
Yes.
And
Yes.
being decisive does not mean you don't deliberate. What
Mm-hmm.
I'm experiencing with the people that I speak with, many deliberate. They need to take in the information
Yeah.
before they feel confident in making the decision. And I think a lot of it is part of actually, this, I don't know that I've ever thought of it this way. It's owning that you are a strong decision maker. Many
Oh,
people
yeah.
get
That's so
caught up in
good.
a label of
Yeah.
themselves. Oh, I'm indecisive. I don't do this.
Mm.
Stop
Yes.
saying that. I mean,
Yes.
seriously, there's no benefit to saying that. Each of us has the ability to make strong decisions. And as a leader,
100%.
obviously, that's a piece of
Yes.
what you need to bring to the puzzle. So,
Yeah.
should you be sitting with that label that likely
Mm.
you've self-imposed, maybe others have added it to you,
Yeah.
what does it mean to let that label go so that you can step into the strength of being someone who, look, I
Mm.
take information in and I
Mm-hmm.
move forth in the best way that I can. And the key thing, you can always course correct.
Yeah.
That
Right.
is the key truth.
Yes.
You
Yes.
make, I say this to my kids all the time. I'm like, you will make the very best choice you can in the moment with who you are and what you know today.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, of course, you're going to know more.
Right. Right.
And you go in thoughtfully and consciously, intentionally, all these words we've been throwing out there, and they're
Mm-hmm.
such important words. And should something be off about the decision you made,
Yeah.
you make a new one. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
in
Nothing's
some way,
permanent.
it's, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's an impermanence to it.
Yeah, I love that. And you used a phrase that I want to just highlight for our listeners, because when we think about ourselves and we think about this idea of being a decision maker, if prior to today you haven't thought of yourself as a decision maker or someone who is indecisive, you offered a phrase, I am someone who is being, or I am someone who is becoming. For our emerging leaders that are listening, that I talk a lot about the I am statements. Our who we say we are is an
Mhm.
identity. And so if we can change that, even if we don't believe it at the moment, we can use the phrase, I am someone who is becoming a
Yes.
decision maker. So I just want to offer that, because that phrase, that someone who is becoming, is so key to all of these decisions that we've been talking about in this choice mapping.
And I'll layer that with here's another subtlety in what you're describing. Often when I have someone create a map, I have them begin with an I choose statement. I choose to move, I
Oh
choose
yeah,
to
it's
start
good.
a new partnership, whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
But there are times that you need to soften that statement. And it may
Mm,
be I choose to explore stepping into partnership. I choose to
yeah.
explore moving to a new city.
Mm-hmm.
And just the nature of adding, I choose to explore versus I choose, there's a very different energy to that.
Yes.
It can sometimes soften it a bit for
Mm-hmm.
someone
Sure.
to just like, oh, I don't have to fully make that decision. I'm exploring the details for myself.
Right.
And then when you feel ready, then you
Mm,
can move into the true I choose to statement. So that's
yes.
often, and it's a version of what you were saying. I
Yes, I
choose,
love that.
who am I choosing to step into be? Do I fully
Yeah.
believe it? Maybe not,
Right.
but I'm choosing that.
Yeah, exactly. Kim, this is so powerful. I think the tool that you've created and just put forward in your book and the work that you do is just amazing for any person who wants to live an intentional life and live more intentionally and by design rather than by default. And so I would love for people to find out how they can get in touch with you, find out more, maybe even buy your book. Where do people go to find out more?
Easiest place is via my website, kimdeyoung.com. And from there, there's a link to the book and
Okay.
links to all sorts of things, links, ways to learn more about choice mapping. If you would like to
Excellent.
follow me on Instagram, you can
Yeah.
certainly reach out to me via the site. So that's the
Awesome.
easiest place.
We'll make sure we put that link in the show
Thank you.
notes, and that way people can get in touch with you. Kim, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing with the audience, and thank you for just connecting with me. I'm so
Mhm.
grateful for Derek and the folks who introduced us to each
Yes.
other.
Yes. Thank you. This has just been a pleasure. Love
Uh,
speaking with you.
I love it.